Hello. Welcome to my channel Touching Stories. You're about to hear an amazing story about love and unexpected decisions. Enjoy watching.
Katie stared at the familiar interior, unchanged since the 80s. Ariana's house is a time capsule. Here you can make movies about Ariana and perestroika without sets. All the achievements of developed socialism are gathered in the old house. Yugoslavian wall crystal, the walls of which did not know drinks and sauces. Color TV, carefully tucked away under a napkin so that the kinescope does not fade. Multicolored carpets thickly covered both floors and walls. But today something had changed. Invisible, intangible, almost indistinguishable. What did you do, Ariana? Vacuum the giant rug that covers the coldest wall? Clean the red floor lamp? Finally got rid of the record player and the records that already have dust on them as thick as a finger? No. The answers were all negative. The change was on some other intangible level. "Oh, Kathy," whispered dreamily to Ariana, who looked a dozen years younger. "What a man! Oh my God! Oh my God! What did he do?" she asked with undisguised curiosity. "Tell me already." "Not a man, but a wizard," Ariana continued. "Not a wizard, but a magician. Are you going to tell me or not?" Ariana only rolled her eyes dreamily, no specifics. This intrigued Katie even more. The most daring assumptions arose in her old woman's head. Of course, a man from out of town could do anything. But this one didn't seem to have come back from the far north, but from Washington. And Ariana is, God forgive me, not the freshest. "Oh my God." Ariana continued to shake her head. "Would you like some liqueur?" "No, of course not." Grandma waved her hand. "You know I don't drink." Then the usual ritual of persuasion began. That was the custom in this house and between old friends. There were various arguments that hadn't changed in decades. Ariana would convince Katie to have a drink, while the other would argue an object. First of all, Ariana said, "A natural product is healthy. All doctors recommend 50 drops a day." "Oh," Katie parried, "believe those doctors more. You know that some of them don't cure but poison." Secondly, Ariana continued, ignoring the arguments, "Alcohol in small quantities allows you to relax, sleep. At our age, it's important and you won't have to take pills." "You realize that I have no problem with sleep," answered her old friend. "Sometimes I fall asleep so much that I can't get up. I can hardly open my eyes." And thirdly, Ariana smiled, "If you don't have a drink with me, I won't tell you what Harvey did last night." Katie wanted to agree as it was, but the new argument added some intrigue to their long-standing ritual. The grandmothers had a complete division of roles and responsibilities. Ariana made wonderful maluka on cherries, currants, gooseberries, strawberries, grape seeds, and other non-obvious fruits. Kathy was a huge tea expert. She had an arsenal of different types of this beverage in her kitchen set. "All right," Katie exhaled. "One of each. That's it, isn't it?" "One at a time," Ariana shrugged. She was well aware that their lunches were never limited to the minimum dose. "Help me set up." "God, what a man, what a man." Katie was burning with curiosity. What had this young man from out of town done to her friend? Look at her. She's 10 years younger. Her gait had become firmer, and now she could playfully be called a grandmother instead of an old lady. And after all, she was going to die last week. Even found out the cost of the coffin and funeral services. "Why are you sitting there?" Ariana's frightened voice brought Katie out of her slumber. "Come on, raise your hand. Say your name." "I'm fine," the old lady said. "I haven't had a stroke. I'm just thinking. What are we going to drink our liquor with?" "You know what, with marmalade. Remember?" Ariana hesitantly reached into her bag. The bag of sweets was there. According to their long-standing ritual, she brought marmalade slices, the kind sold in the collapsed USSR. That union had swallowed up not only their youth, but also their life guidelines. It would seem that in the 30 years since the signing of the agreements, new goals and values could have been discovered. But the old ladies lived in the past. Hence this interior frozen in time and rituals that have not changed over the years. "Oh, how good," Ariana said, savoring her prune liqueur. "Can you taste that noble flavor? Like when Brezhnev was in power." "Yes," Katie agreed, but she drank the first shot in one gulp out of habit. It was a nice giddy feeling. as if she'd get an advance tomorrow. You know how to make something delicious out of nothing, just like under Gorbachev. That's just the way it is, nodded the neighbor. Kathy and Ariana are old ladies, dandelions of God. The former has a dog, a family member, the latter a cheeky cat. Kathy once had a husband and a son, but both were taken away by the fate of the villain. Now she lived out her life alone, clinging to the past with all her might. Ariana had a husband and a beautiful daughter. The daughter went to study in the Czech Republic and therein established herself. For her sake, Ariana had to learn the internet, but the signal in the village was unstable. The other day my daughter called me. Ariana shared the happy news. Imagine, she's pregnant. That's it. I was already afraid that I would not live to see this happy moment. If only I would have a year to live, to see the hair, pregnant. Katie said with ill-concealed envy, she's not pregnant for God's sake. She's only 35. Ariana exclaimed. Life is just beginning, as they say. She says she's going to have a baby by herself. Congratulations, her friend said, but not sincerely, furtively wiping away a tear. Katie thought that the only person other than the mailman with whom she kept in touch might not have been so saddened by the news. Her son, alas, had left no offspring. And then, as soon as Katie was ready to go, she'd be the end of the line. I wish I could feel happy before I die, just once. Listen, Ariana, said the old woman. So what did that rascal do to you yesterday? I don't know how to tell you. Ariana smiled. It's awkward. If you don't know, then there's something to say. Come on, ease your soul, Tony. Oh, of course there is something to tell, Ariana exclaimed. My God, such a man, such a man. Come on, don't bore me. All right, Ariana showed leniency, but I'll have a second one, just to loosen tongues. All right, Katie nodded. This time she didn't even play the usual ritual of persuasion, which earned her a puzzled look from her friend. Curiosity was getting the better of her. Rumors about Harvey had already spread throughout the village. He specialized in old ladies. Maybe she, Sabrina, should try her luck? So listen, Ariana said dreamily. I'm sitting, not touching anyone. A while ago in the auto shop, I smiled luck. Such a beef bones picked up a beauty. I'm making cold cuts. Want to see? Enough of this nonsense, Katie shouted and covered her mouth with her hand, frightened. Ariana's eyebrows rose to her forehead. They hadn't raised their voices at each other in this house in years. Nothing could mar their friendship, neither sorrow, nor joy, nor inflation and devaluation. And here, so, envied her friend. Well, let her suffer some more. Let her be patient, while she, Ariana, tells me in detail about her adventures. Oh, you impatient girl. Ariana smiled and pinched her friend under the rib. She gave a funny yelp and twitched. Look how the blood plays, the way it's bubbling. I'm sorry, Katie waved her hand. Something came over me. You know, once in 100 years, a grandmother shoots. Okay, Ariana waved her hand. Where was I? So I'm sitting there, building my legs. He walks in with all the gallantry in the world. What do you think he was holding in his beautiful hands? Harvey's head was falling apart like the Soviet Union in the 90s. The pain of falling from the very top of the social order to the sinful earth seemed unbearable. Just yesterday, he was a deputy, appeared on federal channels and influenced the state agenda. And today, he is literally thrown overboard in political life. He has to give up all benefits and privileges, take a step back. And all for what? Some poor animal that he had the misfortune to. Why did I go into that forest? Harvey wailed, rubbing his temples. I could have gone to Turkey like a man, or the Philippines. But no, patriot, God forgive me. A meeting with a political technologist named Harry was scheduled for 10 o'clock in the morning. He was already waiting in the guest house, where the former deputy usually held talks. Looking at the luxurious government summer house, Harvey felt wistful. He would have to vacate this nest in the very near future. For good? Good morning, Harry said obligingly. I'd had 2 cups of coffee already waiting for you. The political technologist had a strange habit of translating time into non-obvious objects. The flight was delayed by 5 cigarettes. Anyone had to strain their wits to translate cigarettes, cups of coffee, or capitals into minutes and hours. But Harry still had more advantages than disadvantages. Most importantly, he never failed. His thinking was ahead of time, like a jet airplane traveling faster than the speed of sound. "Hi," replied Zero, taking a seat in the chair. "Listen, I'm sorry about my appearance. I was working with documents all night last night. Last day. It was necessary to properly shake out the archive, so as not to pull anything with myself." "I see," smiled the political technologist. "But Harvey, why keep these papers in your hands? The whole world has long ago switched to digital. It's time to give up paper decisively and irrevocably." What he meant, the ex-deputy did not understand, but nodded just in case. He looked at his interlocutor through the veil of headache. Expensive watch, stylish shoes and pants. Also the stupid beard that aged him. But I guess it was fashionable now, or he wanted to look older than his years. "I'm a total failure," Harvey exhaled. "I'm no longer an MP. I saw it on the news," Harry nodded. "But it's not the end of the world. I'm beginning to feel like my whole life has been wasted," the politician continued. "Everything I've dreamed of, everything I've thought about, it's all slipping out of my hands. Even this summer house. These are temporary difficulties," the political technologist said firmly. At the right moment, his voice went from subservient to commanding. "Your name is in the news so much now that it could well be converted into victory." The word fell to the floor of the guest house with a terrible clatter. That's not something you say out loud here. So Harry was so confident in his abilities that he was even willing to break the unwritten rules. His cheerfulness passed to the former deputy and his mind cleared. Now he too was ready to act. In victory over what? Harvey asked. The confident voice of his interlocutor made him feel better, and even his headache became less. "The gubernatorial election is coming up," Harry whispered. "In your hometown." "Oh, the southern capital." It wasn't the biggest city on the map of his homeland, but it was also very important. After all, it was from there that he started his way into the big political sport. It's where he got his first ranking and his first professional injuries. But can you win where the real political heavyweights are against you? And they're bound to come around. "Do you really think I have a chance of winning?" Harvey asked suspiciously. "Yes," Harry nodded. "But you got to work. You got to work. So that the electorate can see your determination and assertiveness, your best qualities." Harvey stood up and paced the room in excitement. The headache was gone. It must have been the adrenaline, excitement, and anticipation of future victory that worked better than aspirin. He even saw the slogan of the election campaign. "You asked me to come back. There's nothing to do in the capital. There's plenty to do back home. And who needs this Washington? It's a sleepy kingdom. No movement, only construction." "We need a strategy," said the former deputy with excitement, "so that I don't get shot down early in the process." Harry smiled and, like a magician, pulled a folder out of his sleeve. Harvey could have sworn it hadn't been there a second ago. Political technologists were like magicians to him, though, and he preferred not to pry into their inner workings. "The draft strategy was written 2 nights ago," Harry said proudly. "I just called it return on demand." "Fools think alike," Harvey said with surprise. "I beg your pardon," the political strategist clarified. "Nothing. I'm telling you, the idea was literally in the air. It just popped into my head, and who should ask me to come back? The simplest people," Harry said firmly. "The simpler the better. You do realize that the United States is not made up of billionaires and influencers." "Nonsense," Harvey waved his hand. "Nobody's gonna listen to them. Simple people are simple. Remember Gokul with his The Overcoat? That's where the little man is described." Harry smiled. Like Harvey, he was well versed in literature. He liked the comparison with Mickey. He had thought of it himself. Small people, however, could do great things if the human mass reached a critical level. "I'm telling you seriously," the political technologist persuaded him. "The electorate has a demand for downshifting among the elites." "Did you just call me a downer?" Harvey was indignant. "By the way, I didn't want to get into this robe-deer story at all. Downshifting is about getting back to your roots." "To the roots," explained the political technologist, not paying attention to the interlocutor's remarks. "Simplification. Only in the US it means living for the region, not for the capital." "I still don't understand anything," Harvey exhaled, although the idea came to him. "Explain it with an example, please." "Well, you leave your club apartment, in this case a government dacha. Then, you settle in the simplest housing, for example, in Khrushchevka. You take the subway. And communicate with the voter. Immerse yourself not only in his problems, but in life itself. I'm not going to a condo. Harvey recalled with horror the experience of living in such an apartment. Cold walls, leaky windows, perpetually wet pipes. And if there are insects running from the neighbors, you can go crazy. No, if we're going to give up comfort, it's got to be somewhere outside the crowded cities. I suggest downshifting in the countryside. Harry smiled, as if reading his thoughts. We'll launch a campaign for a deputy in exile. They say, voluntarily gave up all benefits and privileges, chopping firewood, picking Colorado potato beetles off potatoes. Dives not to the bottom of life, but in the thick of it, and we'll save up the response. And when it reaches the mass we need, we will announce our participation in the gubernatorial elections. Said Harvey. It's an interesting idea, but I see a catch in it. Suddenly, the national anthem played loudly in the room, and Harvey and Harry jumped up from their seats out of habit or instinct. Katie tried for the second day in a row to find an explanation for the transformation of the village. Was it really about this visitor, or as her grandmother called him, the return? He'd been here before, a long time ago, as a young boy. He'd been on TV later. She remembered him right away. Katie's memory for faces was excellent. But why he'd been on TV, she didn't. Where had he been for so many years? Maddie, Katie begged, tell me what he did to you. I won't leave you alone. Oh, Kathy, said the old woman rudely. All you want to know is like that Miss Marple from the TV series. Who? Katie asked and crossed herself just in case. She preferred not to watch foreign soap operas. You know, the old detective, the villager explained. I don't have time to talk to you. I've got pigs to feed, poultry to clean. But Harvey, of course. Did I tell you I was interviewed later? Maddie rolled her eyes dreamily, and envy gripped Katie's throat with steely fingers. Why were they lucky and she wasn't? She had to find out what this city returnee was doing in their village. And she'll be interviewed later too. So I'll help, Katie smiled. I'll help with the pigs and the poultry, and you can tell me all about it. Of course you will, Maddie said admonishingly. That's why you came to visit me, and then we'll make pancakes together. With our teeth, what else is there to chew? Katie couldn't stand that active old lady. At 67, Maddie still kept a huge household. It wasn't uncommon for her to invite her friends over for a sit-down tea. But in reality, to participate in her agricultural battles in the stable or in the field. Maddie could hire people, but she didn't like that. Close and distant friends, of which there were 100 in the village, were another matter. What do I feed the pigs? Maddie asked, as if she couldn't see her friend's gaze of excitement. Bread. It's expensive, but I've got to deal with Barry. The one who runs the store, Katie said with interest. Barry is a prominent man. In his 60s, he was divorced for the 6th time and was again the most promising groom in the village. Yeah, smiled Maddie, my old companion. Anyway, he gives me all the bread they don't take away, the bread and the loaf. I slice it up, soak it in water, and feed it to the pigs. Follow me. Katie, in her old age, preferred cozy gatherings with Ariana, with a little Naluka. But the trouble was, yesterday she told me exactly what Harvey had done to her. She said something about an interview too. And the next morning, Katie forgot all about it like a blackout. As they say, the third drink was too much. And now she needed to find out what this returnee was doing to the old ladies and why they were lining up for him. And I said to Kalinka, suddenly switched Maddie, why do you come to us one by one? Wouldn't I have gathered a dozen at once and made everyone happy at once? You can do it, I tell you. Just like that. Intrigue, Katie tried to remember what Ariana had told her yesterday, but her memory refused to help. That's what she said, nodded Maddie. Why are you cutting the bread so big? Make it smaller. They're pigs, not bears. Now we're talking. Get the hose, we'll soak the bread. Dumping the slices into the troughs, Katie went to the gate. It was good that Maddie had a hose so she wouldn't have to carry water by hand. The hose was on the ground, and the old woman had to bend down to pick it up. Maddie nimbly, despite her age, put on the nozzle and selected the rain mode. Her lips moved, but the water from the hose absorbed the sounds. There he is, she said, on top of him. And I say, no, I can't do that. He came from the side. He has a beautiful singing voice. I can't hear anything. Katie screamed. She was terribly curious about what the returnee had been doing to that old lady yesterday. From the side, from above, when the water softened the bread, Matey opened the stable and the pigs raced to the troughs. One of them caught Katie and she almost fell to the ground. She held on. The pigs chomped on the bread and in a few minutes had eaten everything they were supposed to. They started licking the troughs. Look at the backs. She began to brag, stroking the pigs lovingly. That's what a loin will be. And the scapular part? Just like in the textbook. You're boring me, Maddie. Katie exhaled. I need a rest. Go on then to tea, said Maddie. And then after tea, we'll do the bird, God willing. Katie sincerely hoped God would spare her this time. At her age, such exercise had brought nothing but pain in her lower back. She would never have gone to Licka's house if it hadn't been for curiosity. Maddie's tea was scalding hot even in her hands. So while Maddie sipped from her mug, Kathy sipped on her drink. Something's making me feel heavy, she whispered. Shall I lie down? Of course, answered her friend fearfully. Why does it hurt? Did I kill you? No, it's fine, Katie said, stepping into the only living room. It's all right, old girl. At her age, lying down in the middle of the day is the order of the day. Young people don't have that luxury. Young boys and girls have a million things to do. They don't even have time to sit down. Katie trudged back to her bedroom, with Matey wailing next to her. She was already embarrassed that she'd called her friend to help. Don't worry about it. I'll just lie down for 5 minutes and it'll go away, Katie said. She walked into the bedroom, saw the bed and the nightstand, and it all made sense to her in a flash. You old, Semyonovna hissed and went at Madi, raising her hand. She crossed herself and shouted loudly, calling for help. But no one heard her. The national anthem of the United States was on Harvey's cell phone with only one number displayed. Colleagues called it his employer, but the former lawmaker considered it merely an intermediary between him and the people. He didn't expect a call so soon. He hoped to rest for another week. Will you vacate the dacha as agreed? The voice asked. Or have you already called the television and the support group, and are you going to build barricades? As agreed, Harvey said rudely. He saw Harry making signs and said, I got a second line. I've got line 2. Just a second, he said, and turned off the microphone. It's them, isn't it? The political strategist whispered, It's them. Don't whisper, I turned the sound off. Harvey whispered back. Something to say? Yes, Harry nodded his head. Turn on the speakerphone and say to the camera that you're going to the country. That you'll never need this cottage again. Just a second, I'll put the phone on. That's it, action. Harvey straightened up, fixed his hair, cleared his throat. He turned on the microphone, and with it, the speakerphone. Smolny? He asked in a deliberately rough voice. I have already told you, and do not ask me to stay at this dacha and write memoirs to your tune. Never and never, do you hear? What? The frightened voice on the other end of the wire trembled. Do you feel bad? I'm fine, shouted Harvey. I feel great. I'm going away. I'm going to the country. I'm going to spend the rest of my life working with the electorate in the field. I'm going to get up at 6 in the morning, shoveling snow, giving lectures. Then the former MP saw Harry shake his head. I'm going to teach the kids lessons. Harvey, is everything all right? His voice was completely disoriented. If we have to, the cottage can be delivered a week late. Not a day later. The former deputy cut me off. My last word tomorrow, and that's it. That's it. I don't have time. The people are waiting. See you soon. Harvey spent a long time in his head selecting an offensive word that could be used to call his interlocutor. Traitor? Probably not. He's lying. Crook? Not proven. Bribe taker? Never been caught. Finally, Harvey just hung up the phone and looked at Harry. He turned off the camera and gave him a thumbs up. That's a good start, he said. You're not the ones getting kicked out. You're the one who's leaving. You voluntarily resigned, didn't you? Of course, nodded the former deputy. He remembered a long and detailed conversation with one of the most senior officials in the country. The voluntary resignation was possible thanks to their agreement. Tomorrow, we will meet and discuss the details of our campaign. You're ready to win, right? Harvey spent the rest of the day packing his things. He had accumulated a lot of things over the years of living in this country house, which he habitually called the country house. Gifts from his travels, memorabilia. Here, for example, a large African drum. A gift from colleagues from South Africa or Congo. What a thing. I'll give it to an orphanage, Harvey thought. Or a giant traffic wand. 2 meters high, it looked like a wizard's staff or a stick of Santa Claus. He was given this trinket by the head of the traffic police on his anniversary. Must resting at all? Harvey asked him. We have no time to rest, Harry parried with a smile. Let's go quickly to discuss the details of the plan. There's not a minute to lose. Seated in the guest house, the two men resembled Anthony and Lucy discussing a battle plan with the Whites. Only it was the younger man acting as strategist and the older man listening intently. Harry spread out a folder, and in it were the results of surveys, some charts, a visual style. So, Operation Comeback, said the political strategist. The goal is to become the head of... Don't say it out loud, Harvey asked. You know there might be ears. Head of the village, period. For his experiment, Harry chose a huge village in the area they were interested in. The name was poetic. It had once been a thriving village with manufacturing and life. A school, a dispensary, and a dozen stores remained. Ruthless urbanization has not left the settlement a chance to become something other than a place for recreation of townspeople. According to the documents, the population is almost 3,000 people. The political technologist brought him up to speed. In fact, only dacha owners and pensioners live here. More precisely, pensioners. There are 1,000 of them here, according to the most modest estimates. Wow, Harvey whistled. What a skewed demographic. What about the men? Heart, blood pressure, bad habits, Harry shrugged. The men are sweating, so you'll be in a fishbowl. The cameraman writes nonstop, writes everything, and then we pick out the right bits. An interviewer follows you around the village. Quiet hour, when the cameras are off from 10 to 6. Just like, thought Harvey, but said nothing aloud. He needs to completely change his demeanor. Not to argue, not to denounce, but to listen more, and never use obscene words. The cameras will remember everything. If you see a cameraman or an engineer, ignore him, Harry continued. That means they've come to interview another grandmother, set up equipment or check something. They won't answer your questions, just pretend they don't exist. Where are you taking me? Thought the former MP, but the excitement had already taken over. What's our goal? The goal is to win over the elderly electorate, replied Harry. To win their hearts and sympathies. To get them to literally look you in the mouth. What will I do to attract them? Harvey asked. What can I do to help them? I have an idea, Harry said, and smiled slyly. But I don't know if you'll like it. Katie finally came to her senses. She was lying on the couch in her home, like a living organism. At a certain point in its life, it was constantly growing, doubling in size, adding new rooms, bristling with pipes and satellite dishes. Then she was suddenly widowed and left all alone. The growth of the house stopped. Now, of all the rooms, Kathy used only 2. The kitchen, where she met guests, and the bedroom. This is not a house, but a barracks, she heard a beautiful voice. Who's there? The old woman asked, frightened. We met. A man stood on the threshold of the room. Have you forgotten? No, Katie answered, although the face was completely unfamiliar. She tried to stand upright. I never forget anything, young man. She was embarrassed by her memory, which was failing her every now and then. Since they had met, she had to reason logically. Who was this man? I'd like to think a doctor, but no. No suitcase, no hurry in his movements, no condescending attitude to patients. Maybe a new district doctor. Unlikely, too old, and you can't see the shape. So it's this. The only thing, I forgot my patronymic, complained the old woman. The whole village is talking about you, young man, and I've lost track of your name. Harvey, he replied with a smile. You can just call me Harvey. I like to be addressed by my first name. Oh no, not at all, Katie objected. There's no such thing as a slight, and there can't be, especially not with a man like that. Well, yes, agreed the guest. You were ill, remember? I walked you home. Ariana asked me to. I couldn't refuse a woman like that. Katie was embarrassed for the second time. What happened at Maddie's house? They'd had a fight, but the subject wasn't obvious. Oh yeah, a month ago she lost a book, a volume of Bulgakov's White Guard. Then Maddie had called her a senile person who couldn't remember the simplest things. And today she found the book in her friend's bedroom and lost control of herself. Mutual reproaches, scolding, and even abuse, Katie still remembered. But what happened next? Where did this handsome man come from? He looked about 40 or so. He's still young. She knew at 69 that 40 was the prime of life. Are you feeling all right? Harvey asked. Shouldn't we call a doctor? No, son, sighed Kathy. Who feels all right at that age? Rheumatism, blood pressure, sugar, it's all getting worse. And sometimes, just the weather makes my joints ache. And it's so depressing, like in Uncle Fyodor, remember? Your paws ache, your tail falls off. And she began to list her illnesses for a long time, confessing to a stranger as if to a priest. Then she switched to internal problems. A small pension, a meager choice of food in the grocery store, an interesting series on TV, and even those go on the third round. At some point, Katie realized that her guest was waiting for something. And for the umpteenth time that day, she was embarrassed. Oh, I'm sorry, son, she wailed. Standing there like an intruder, I didn't even offer you a seat. It's all right, the man replied. You better show me where the light is. Light? The old woman was surprised. There's light everywhere, thank God. Or do you mean the light bulb? Well, there it is, pull the string. Oh, I'm sorry, I was complaining about my illnesses in life. I feel better now. I'm all right, actually. Well, Harvey said, if you're feeling better, we can get started. Start what? Kathy asked, startled. What do you mean? Harvey was astonished. Why you invited me here? You said it was all the talk of the village, and that you wanted to join in. What did I say? I didn't dare say no. I wish I could remember the details, sighed the old woman, but I'm very interested, really. Believe me, for 2 days I almost did not sleep, just thinking about it. And to be interviewed afterwards, yes. Well, said the man, if everyone's talking, we should try it. What do you like, the classics or the newer stuff? Harvey had recently turned 47. He didn't consider himself an old man. The fire of youth was always beating in his heart, the light of which was reflected in his eyes. Lately, he had lost a bit of weight. His hair had turned gray, wrinkles appeared, and his teeth began to ache. Now he preferred baths, healthy sleep, and good food. The countryside had all that, so Harry's thought was fertile ground. The more Harvey ran the story of this fall through his mind, the more he felt sorry for himself. How did he, an experienced politician, end up in such a stalemate? First, he'd hit a roe deer on the road. Then, obeying some primitive instinct, he cut it up and loaded the best pieces into the car. Out of nowhere, police officers, wildlife inspectors, and reporters showed up. He was good at some things, too. First of all, he was caught doing something inappropriate not in some expensive resort, but in the remote Siberian forest. Secondly, he was driving not an expensive foreign car, but a budget off-road vehicle Niva. In the third place, he did not deny anything and did not refuse to confess guilt, which later allowed him to avoid criminal responsibility. Kayana is the village of my youth, he told the political technologist when they were driving on bumpy roads to the goal. That's where my professional life began. After a brilliant defense of my diploma work, I was sent to work in the village on assignment. Oh, how I resented it. I dreamed of diplomatic work, traveling, and they told me so sharply, lawyers are needed in the countryside too. I know, Harry smiled. Before I prepared the campaign, I studied your biography very carefully. Oh, it doesn't say everything, said Harvey. I like Kiana. I still don't know why farm businesses need lawyers though. They put me behind the wheel of a dump truck a week later. That's what they wrote on my employment history, part-time driver. I read about that, nodded the political technologist, and about your fateful interview in '95. I know all about it, Harvey. That very speech was broadcast on all federal channels. The governor, his entourage, the big boys, the press. They happened to run into Harvey, who was trying to change a shock absorber on his dump truck. From the very beginning of the interview, the journalist heard something very different from what he expected, but he was satisfied with the result. Do you remember how I slashed at you back then? Harvey asked. They said that the country had collapsed. Now it's different. Now the country is reviving. The political technologist remained meaningfully silent, and the former deputy recalled his emotional speech. How he denounced the Democrats and their entourage for not being able to curb prices or send a normal shock absorber. How he put the big boss in his place, almost a celestial. "Who are you so verbose?" the governor asked then, pressing his lips together unhappily. "Lawyer driver?" "Me," Harvey replied menacingly. "I'm a lawyer, and if necessary, I'm a driver, and if my country needs me, I'm a mechanic, and a mechanic. And no one can stop me, not a single corrupt man." This contemptuous "who will you be" cost the governor his post. He just wasn't voted in anymore. Harvey, on the other hand, went up. He got a job in the diplomatic service. Then he was elected to Parliament. After some more time, he got acquainted with political technologists and began to work with them in order to exclude the element of surprise from his political life. And it, as they say, took place. "While we're driving, let's go over the important points," Harry said. "No alcohol, no tobacco. In the picture, only healthy lifestyle, proper nutrition, help." I got it. Harvey waved his hand. "I'm done. It's just been a long time since I've had an excuse. And don't forget, we are interested in old ladies," continued the political technologist. "They're the first ones we need to win over, at any cost. They will be interviewed. Grandmothers love it." "Well, you are like a parrot, by God," grinned the former deputy. "You repeat the same thing to me 100 times. Do you think I have no memory?" "It's just that, you see, the target audience is not easy," said Harry. "We know it's hard to talk to old people. Hard and not always pleasant. That depends. The truth is, Harvey really liked grandmothers. It all came from his childhood. He was a late child, born when his mom was well into her 40s. There were hardly ever any young girls or boys in their house, but there were plenty of women of balsamic age. The house Harry had chosen was a solid 4 on a 5-point scale. It had everything he needed for life: a gas stove, a toilet, and a good bed. But for some reason, the shower room was outside. But there was an excellent sauna, without which Harvey could not imagine life. What could be better than a steam that could penetrate to the bones? Harry's plan, of course, was a bit adventurous, but in this sort of thing, it was a win or lose situation. Either he'd really be reborn in this village, or his political career would be lost forever. Harvey just needed to be himself, but a better version of himself. He crossed himself and walked into the house, breathing in the smell of the backwoods. Even a village as large as Kayana was full of rumors. They spread much faster than news on the telegram feeds. And at the level of exclusivity, they could well do honor to the most informed sources. That morning, Lydia had to feed the animals twice as fast as usual. The way to the house of an old acquaintance was about 1 kilometer, and there was no time to lose. As always, the gate and the gates were securely locked. "I come in peace," she shouted with laughter. But the landlady did not react to the humor for some reason. There was not a shadow of a smile on her face. "She came, she replied colorlessly. "If you leave, no one will be offended. Not me." "Did you hear what Katie did last night?" Maddie asked, standing on the doorstep of a familiar house. "The way she threw herself at me, huh?" "I heard," Ariana nodded. "What are you doing here? I wasn't even going to let you on the doorstep." "Why not?" The villager was indignant. The resentment came over her like a cold shower. "Ariana, we've known each other since childhood, and suddenly you say such insulting things." "You might steal something from me," Ariana said. She was very sensitive about property. If she lent money or things to anyone, she made a note of it in a huge book. The news that Maddie had treacherously stolen a volume of The White Guard once again strengthened her confidence that there are no friends in life, only allies. "Oh, and you too." Maddie flung out her hands. "Well, I forgot about this book. Who can forget?" "It is Clark can forget." Shook her head Ariana. "And you, Maddie, never forget anything. As if I didn't know." Resentment came over Maddie. She had come to Nina as an umpire, an advocate, but she saw a real prosecutor or even a judge. Imagine that. Surely she should be the one to accuse and judge, not Ariana, since that was her fate. But now Maddie couldn't help her dislike for this woman who had so unfairly wronged and humiliated her. "Come on, Ariana, let's make up," the old woman suggested. "At our age, it's too late to quarrel. Soon we'll have to justify ourselves to God anyway." "I didn't quarrel," Ariana shrugged her shoulders. "Do you have all or nothing?" "Oh, you?" Maddie was indignant. "Help me, I came for help." Help me to explain to Katie what a stupid thing I've done. Am I to be known as a thief in the whole village? There's only one person who can help you, Ariana shrugged, and you know his name well. By the way, he treats me better. Maddie said defiantly. I gave him a top-class idea, so that he wouldn't just visit one old lady, but many of them, a dozen. Oh, you bore me, old woman, said Ariana, turning and strolling back into the lot. She heard her former friend shouting and turned around against her will. A car was speeding down the country road too fast for their area. It had flashing beacons on the cab. There could be no mistake, and it was heading toward the house Harvey rented. Follow him? Maddie shouted with fear. Look, they're after him. What are you standing there for, old girl? Ariana exclaimed. We got to act now, do you hear me? Now? Billy's office could be characterized in a few words, modest but tasteful. Lack of finances always had to be disguised. Of course, being chairman of the Kayana village government wasn't his dream. But he's only 40 years old. They'll notice him, they'll praise him. They will take him to work first in the Moscow region and then in the capital. It is only necessary to wait for his hour. Things were going well. There were fewer and fewer justified appeals every year, and the flow of complaints was getting weaker. Not that the old ladies were happy with Billy. It was just that they'd already noticed that looking to the village government for help wasn't a good idea. And rightly so. The head himself was in no hurry to prowl around the village and solve other people's problems. As they say, initiative is punishable, and he has already seen it in the career trajectories of his colleagues. Head, you paged me? Carlo, head of the police station, showed up at the door. He did, Billy nodded. The policeman was calling his position by its proper title, and he'd already waved goodbye. After all, being a head didn't hurt at all. Come in, sit down. I have a question. What, from the capital? Carlo smiled. Are you afraid of the authorities? Things were going well in the village until this former deputy wandered in. He would have settled in Kayana, gone fishing and picked mushrooms for God's sake. But no, he organized some kind of endless series that was gaining views on YouTube. And instead of a set, it was his, Billy's, settlement. Instead of actors, it's grandmothers talking about how much fun they had with Harvey Sergeyevich. Why are you smiling? He asked the policeman angrily. I got a call from Washington the other day. They called and explained it to me. And I'm not laughing, you know. And you're gonna stop laughing now. Carlo adjusted his black tie. It was a piece of clothing that had seen better days, stained and wrinkled. The policeman kept forgetting who was boss in Kayana, and the head of the administration had to remind him. He lives and lives, Carlo shrugged. Doesn't break the law, no propaganda, or whatever the right word is. Are you sure? Billy asked. Are you sure about that? There have been no complaints or appeals, the policeman answered on duty, and we have no reason to react. And we have to be proactive, Comrade Colonel Billy said, so that we don't get any complaints. So that we don't get complaints. Carlo was silent. He had enough to do. There were constant burglaries from empty houses in the village. Fortunately, there hadn't been any more serious crimes for years. Men were almost extinct in the village, and the grandmothers were not known for their criminal behavior. Only if someone came to their village and started touring, but that was rare. Have you looked on the internet? Billy asked. Did you see what they're showing our Kayana? Of course I have. Carlo smiled. It's a beautiful place, isn't it? Then tell me something, continued the head of the settlement, not noticing the remark. How did they set up all this activity under your nose? Carlo once again adjusted his shabby tie. He didn't like the tone of the conversation. And who was he to pry into business? Who knows what they're up to? Head, I repeat, these immigrants do not break the law. Filming themselves quietly, said the policeman. It's an amateur movie, but it'll do. And in the lead role is not just anyone there, but a big man, an MP. I'm only 3 years away from retirement, you know. I don't want to be promoted to inspector again. Former deputy, the chairman corrected him. And you know who can demote you. An ex-deputy helps women, Carlo continued. What's criminal about it? The men were silent. The head of the administration began to doubt. Really, what can we charge this gas stroller? He's obviously here for a purpose. But what purpose? And is it acceptable to act rudely, to break into his house, to ask questions? Perhaps he would have waited a little longer, as he usually did. But those who give orders are hardly patient. What's he doing with those broads? Billy asked grudgingly. Why'd they come out so happy? Agents reported, Carlos said conspiratorially. He's a very interesting guy. Can you imagine? He's got his mouth on them. But the policeman was prevented from finishing by a phone call. Billy looked at the numbers, but immediately put a smile on his face, as if it were a medical mask that had almost grown on his body during the pandemic. Jack's at the machine listening. He said, Work in progress. Yes, that's right. Yeah, we got it. No, we're not going to sit back. Yes, we are. Looking at the viewing statistics, Harry rubbed his hands together. He belonged to the new wave of political technologists and therefore did not recognize authorities and rules. Strictly speaking, a plan for a new election campaign had long ago matured in his head. The main idea was not to understand the team's plan until the last minute. Then the idea would not be detected by the competitors and they would not be able to bypass or sink the main figure. You don't have to play by the rules, you have to make them up, Harry said, sipping a hookah. You don't break rules, you make new ones. No one likes a loser, but winners are easy and pleasant to talk to. All he needed was a good man in a bad situation. Like a lawmaker who lost his mandate over something stupid. Harvey was perfect for that role. The Roe Deer hit-and-run story was a huge scandal. Harvey had to part with a decent amount of money, compensating for the damage to nature, and also make a donation to the fund for the protection of wildlife. But even that didn't save him. Seeing him in despair, Harry realized it is necessary to act. And now YouTube enriched with a strange series in which the politician lived the most ordinary life imaginable. The first old lady herself fell into Harvey's net, saw the newcomers and came to get acquainted here the ex-deputy and showed his skill. The fame went around the village and the grandmothers lined up to join the beautiful. The main intrigue is what he does with old ladies. Why in a matter of days they began to queue up to invite Harvey to visit them. Harry was editing the 5th installment. The pace of work was fantastic. After the successful projects of previous years, he had some capital and room for experimentation. He had already had to turn down 2 tempting offers to continue working with the return. There's more to come. Dear friends, said the announcer with a pleasant voice, whom Harry had engaged to read the voiceover. It's been a week since our ex-deputy descended from the Moscow heavens to the southern land. He has an ambitious task, to get into every house, to hear and understand every resident. Harry wrinkled his nose. No, it didn't cling. It's too sweet, like watching television. You can't get views with that kind of text. You need intrigue. You need life itself. You need bitterness and spice. What to put into the mouth of the announcer? The political technologist began to think. Perhaps we need to add expression. Add life. He wrote another message, and in half an hour the announcer sent a new recording. The pitch was different, aggressive, and a bit scandalous. Why did the former deputy give up a well-fed life for Kyan? Why are local grandmothers lining up to be alone with him? It's simple. He wants to see real life without gloss and falseness. Can he not only find himself on the southern soil 20 years later, but also help the most defenseless citizens of the U.S. pensioners, giving them a little happiness? Harry rubbed his temples. Well, that's much better. You have to walk a very fine line. On the one hand, to collect a lot of views, and on the other hand, to attract the viewer. At a time when everyone was turning their backs on the ex-deputy, Harry offered his help, and he did not fail. In the future, when they win, Harvey will not forget this kindness, and this political technologist was convinced. But now it is necessary to act without regard to personal time. Since Harry worked without a budget, he could not hire a large team, only those who were willing to work almost for free. What does he do with grandmothers? Harry was writing a synopsis for a new series. We read dozens of different versions, up to the most mystical and fantastical. The answer is simple. He makes them happy. Find out more in the new series right now. Subscribe, like, and click the bell. The cameras had to be monitored by myself. It's not a dusty job. You had to look at the picture, noting any unusual moments. Now Harry looked lazily at the monitors. No way. It seemed that a new storyline had emerged in their series about the deputy's exile. Could it be? What's that car parked outside the house? Suddenly, The political technologist's eyebrows rose to his forehead. Is it really the blinkers on the roof? The main thing is not to tear out the cameras or the whole project would be a waste. At first, Harry wanted to call Harvey and warn him about the guests. But then he changed his mind. It's more interesting that way. It's more lively. Living in the fresh air in the pocket of nature gives an unprecedented boost of energy. In just 3 hours, Harvey coped with a decent number of things. Chopped wood, swept the yard, washed the floors in the house, cooked breakfast. Now he heated the bathhouse and waited for the stove to heat up. "Oh, it's good here," the man said. "It's so good that one could die." It was May, but it could get hot in the mornings. However, Harvey liked baths even in the heat. The main thing after the steam was to dive somewhere into a cold font, or at least pour a bucket of ice water on himself. Harry didn't install a camera in the steam room or the shower room, but the former deputy still felt uncomfortable. What if there was a lens hidden somewhere? Maybe he wants to increase the views in this way. Almost every night a technician came by and rearranged the cameras. Harvey tried to say hello to him, but he didn't say anything back. Suddenly, the former deputy heard the sound of a motor. The neighboring houses were empty. Maybe the cottagers came, or an interviewer to work with another grandmother. This man was also funny. From afar waved at Harvey, but never came close. To get acquainted with the neighbors or what? The former deputy said aloud. The bathhouse had not yet warmed up enough to invite to the first steam. Harvey went out to the lot and was stunned. Right in front of the house stood a whole delegation. A man in a jacket, obviously a representative of the local government. On the right, a policeman in a crumpled tunic, filling out some papers. And on the left, quite unexpectedly, a doctor. It was clear from the white coat worn by the frowning man. "Well, hello," said the man in the jacket. By the badge with the emblem of the settlement, Harvey assumed that this is the local chairman. "Long time no see," as they say. "Never seen each other at all," objected the former deputy. "And it would be better not to see each other by the looks of it." "Well, in '98 you didn't hire me," smiled the official. "Let me remind you or introduce myself, Billy Jack. I'm the one in charge of Cayana. You might say all of Cayana is mine." "You've got a good memory," Harvey said, yawning. "There's just one thing you've forgotten. As an elected official, I enjoy immunity with my precinct." "You're no longer an elected official," the policeman interjected sharply. "Come with us, sir. Let's get in the car, and don't make me use force. We, unlike you, serve the state." "Come with us where?" Harvey was surprised. "I'm not going anywhere. I haven't done anything." "For compulsory examination," said the frowning doctor. Jack signed the order. "You're to undergo a physical examination." The ex-deputy was about to protest, but suddenly he heard Harry's voice in his head. "Don't argue. Go on. Just don't forget your camera." A plot twist like this will be good for his ratings. Just don't get stuck in the hospital or anywhere else. "Okay, I'll just get my papers," Harvey shouted, turned around and disappeared inside the house. The policeman rushed after him, but the former deputy moved a little faster. Harvey grabbed the folder that lay in the hallway and turned around, ready to hold his defense. Hidden inside was a camera connected to Harry's network. All he had to do to turn the device on was turn one of the clasps. "Freeze," the policeman said harshly. "Are we resisting? Running away? What are you talking about? I just took the documents. Here's a whole folder." "Get in the car and don't do anything stupid," Carlo demanded, thus taking the first steps on the big internet screen, "or I'll have to get my bracelets. They're tight, you know, so they won't scratch your delicate skin." "Am I being detained?" "We prefer a different wording." The policeman adjusted his tie. "Summoned. Requested to appear for questioning. Strongly advised to come in." "What difference does it make, after all, if we're taking you to the hospital anyway?" "I don't think so." "What do you think?" Harvey asked. "What's the point of life?" "To do what I'm told and not ask questions," Carlo answered without hesitation. "So I'm still under arrest?" the ex-deputy continued. "Silence," said the policeman rudely. "Talking to you already, you know what? I'm tired. I got the folder in front of me. My job is to take you to the hospital, and there let the doctors decide whether you're healthy or not." Harvey looked at the screen of the phone. A new message in Telegram. A user with the nickname Harry sent an emoji with a thumb. The former MP smiled. There must be new actors in their show. At least you're not going to hit me. Harvey asked loudly, pointing his folder at Carlo. Depends on how you behave, the cop replied. You've gone all high and mighty up there in Washington. You think you can buy everybody. No, we can't. We're not giving you our old ladies, you hear me? By the way, what are you doing with them, huh? Billy didn't notice the camera. He thinks he's doing the right thing because there was a voice from above. After all, he has an order, however unwritten, and he follows it. There are 1,000 old ladies in the village. What if the uninvited guest has the coronavirus? If he's tested, it'll make everyone feel better. They'll learn a little more about him. Satisfied, Billy jolted in the car as it sped down the rural dirt road. He looked in the rearview mirror at the former deputy and felt better. The person didn't look so dapper anymore. He used to be infrequently disliked on TV. Only after the story with the roe deer did he appear on the screens again, but he was hardly happy about it. How do you like our village? Billy asked with a smile. Wonderful, Harvey replied. Beautiful, clean. And the old ladies are a sight to behold. You'll have to talk to the specialists about that. The chairman of the local government nodded toward the doctor. Looking at your unhealthy tendencies, we immediately decided to involve medicine. What, may I ask, is unhealthy? Harvey was surprised. Well, I love old ladies, I love. Besides, you were talking about the coronavirus. The policeman groaned and began to wonder if such bold statements were not forbidden by law. Billy blushed thickly. Old ladies could not leave him indifferent either. But unlike his antagonist, he would never admit it. Only the doctor in the white coat remained indifferent. He was staring out the window, not reacting to Harvey's words. The road to the outpatient clinic had been thoroughly graveled recently, so there weren't many potholes. After all, it was one of the most popular destinations in Guyana. For residents who walk or ride bicycles, a large curb was provided. However, it was not separated from the road in any way, and cars could drive on it if they wanted to. Sign here, Carlo demanded, holding out a form. What's this? Harvey asked. It's an executed arrest warrant. Okay. The outpatient clinic must have been recently renovated. The building had been insulated and painted with decorative plaster, and the inside looked pretty decent too. As soon as Harvey was ushered into the office, the head of the settlement and the policeman vanished. The doctor gestured to a chair. Sit down. Let me introduce myself, he said. My name is Tony. You know my name, the politician replied. What, may I ask, is this play? We are forced laborers, the doctor said instead of answering, and shrugged his shoulders. We'll take a swab, he said. But no one will forbid us to treat the patient well. By the way, we'll have to turn off the daddy. What do you mean? Harvey was surprised. What do you mean, turn off the daddy? You have a camera there, the doctor explained. I noticed it in the car. I don't need the attention. You'll be swabbed for coronavirus and you can go. But I was thinking. About what? The ex-parliamentarian asked. That you would have tea with me with jam, the man said shyly. It's not every day that outstanding people come to our village. I've read your articles. Very cleverly written, on the point. And what do you want to talk about? About the present, the doctor replied. The past and the future. I'm here, believe it or not, like a fly behind glass. I keep hitting and hitting, but I can't get out. You can have tea, Harvey nodded. The doctor's attention to his political career flattered him, but no alcohol. I don't drink. Are you sure? The doctor asked. He opened the cabinet shelf, and behind it, like a battalion of soldiers, lined up a row of colorful bottles of liquor. Or will you choose something? Tea, and that's it, Harvey said. There's a lot of noise in the studio. The audience was invited, not some masses for $500 a person, but a solid audience that goes only where it is really interesting. For the first time in a long time, the administrators even had the opportunity to choose guests rather than persuade any. Everyone wanted to get on the program, understandably why. The host was wiggling, rolling his eyes, talking to the staff. He was warming up. He'd spent all night watching a new show and was impressed. But then the buzzer sounded and the live show began. The presenter's face changed so rapidly as if he had put on a mask. His movements became fast, calibrated, and precise. Like a conductor, he looked around his orchestra at the studio. where politicians, lawyers, government officials, and one priest were seated on armchairs and sofas in front of the cameras. All of them were staring intently into the lenses as if they were deciding a matter of national importance. Good evening, dear friends. This is the program Don't Be Silent, and you're with its permanent host, Androids. Today's topic is I'm Back, a mystery series by a former deputy settled in the countryside. And although the platform for the show is our worst competitor, we still cannot ignore this phenomenon. Let me introduce the guests of our studio. The host began to list the people who had dropped by, but named only the most prominent ones. He corrected his tie and defiantly took a bottle with the sponsor's drink in his hands. He took a symbolic sip and rolled his eyes in pleasure, smiled again and reminded him to keep his cool during the broadcast, not to swear or insult each other. Even though that's what my program's ratings are based on, Androids mentally added, "Attention to the screen," he said, and the studio launched a report on the series I'm Back, which had trended on YouTube in just a few days. The journalist, like a real movie critic, evaluated the play of actors, plot, and other important points. He did not ignore the natural scenery of a beautiful village with a rich history. He highlighted the suspicious love of the deputy for grandmothers, his desire and opportunity to spend a lot of time alone with them. Summarizing, he asked a question that interested many viewers. The United States is great, but there is not enough attention for everyone. Only one thing remains unclear. What does Harvey, who shamefully lost his parliamentary mandate, do with our sweet grandmothers? Is it not unnatural and illegal? The hero of the series himself refused to comment. "Objection!" shouted someone, a sitting member of parliament, and at the same time Parade Harvey. Don't get it wrong, there was no loss of mandate. There was a voluntary resignation. So let's give the floor to our first guest, Android said, ignoring the rejoinder. This is the psychologist-sexologist, a doctor with great experience, Leslie Dolzinskaya. Leslie, listen to your opinion about our story. The woman laid out a substantial sum to get on television and appear on screens across the country. She hoped to recoup her investment within the first month of airing. The first thing to consider is the age of our protagonist, said the middle-aged woman, fixing her hair, which looked more like a hornet's nest. No, Ander, we're not talking about you. Harvey is well into his 40s, but as we see in the public record, no children, no wife. Why the attraction to old ladies? Of course, I'm not at liberty to diagnose him in absentia, but psychology describes this deviation gerontophilia in detail. Are we talking about a deviation from the norm or an individual preference? Android clarified, demonstrating his extensive knowledge of psychology. Scientists think we're talking about individual preference, but I call it an aberration, Leslie said, nodding. Objection, shouted again. Unlike the psychologist, it wasn't the psychologist who was paying, it was him. You diagnose without even seeing the person. How dare you? Are you sure that's what he's doing to old ladies? We must draft a new law and license all psychologists. All you want to do is license them, Leslie retorted, as if there was nothing else to do but prohibit and not allow. In the hall began to rumble and noise. The guests shouted and interrupted each other, guided by the invisible hand of an experienced presenter. The bishop prayed loudly, calling for peace and harmony. The two men, Harvey's supporter and Harvey's opponent when he was a deputy, clashed, having exhausted their arguments. They quickly got into a firm clinch. They had to be separated by other guests. It was thanks to such bickering that the program's ratings grew, and it remained on the air in primetime for many years. When the noise and ruckus reached its peak and the situation started to get out of control, the host decided to act. The gong sounded, signaling the end of part one. So we have a special guest on the air, who is going to set the record straight, said Androids, winking at the camera. Don't ask how we managed to convince him to come on the program. A man named Harry is the creator of the show and also its producer. Let's hear it. There was a round of applause. For the broadcast, the political technologist got rid of his beard and made a stylish hairdo. He wore an expensive suit and solid rimmed glasses. The man walked past the guests with a winning gait, greeted the presenters by the hand and sat down on a chair. Thanks for having me on, he said. I love your show. Thank you. So Harry, are you ready to tell us what the main character, your personal friend and associate, is doing in the village? And most importantly, what does he do alone with his grandmothers? Before we answer that question, Harry said, I'd like each person in this studio to listen to themselves. We've long noticed that the attitude toward the elderly in the US is condescending, at best, and yet they are almost a quarter of the population. And yet, androids cut him off. You don't watch a show but think about global issues. What's going on? With the grandmothers? I'm ready to demonstrate the video, Harry replied. I'm sure it will make most of the guests in this studio ashamed. We're ready. Androids made a decision for everyone. He would deal with the shame and get over it somehow. But what about curiosity? How great it is to socialize with new people without alcohol. The wonderful conversation with the doctor left no headache. They drank 2 cups of tea each and parted satisfied. But as soon as Harvey crossed the threshold of his house, the phone rang. Harvey, he heard a familiar voice in the receiver. It was Ariana. Have you been released yet? Yes, answered the former deputy. What's more, I wasn't even detained. Listen, son, said Ariana. My grandmothers and I have been talking. It's bad that you live like this alone. Such a precious man and alone. It's not good. It's not Christian. I don't worry. The former deputy answered. I'm fine alone, Ariana. No, Mel, the grandmother began to argue. There is a good woman in our village. What kind of woman? A girl, if you think about it. Young, just starting to live. What is this? Harvey thought with horror. A provocation? A setup? Has the competition already infiltrated here? And how to behave in such a delicate situation? Thank you, Harvey replied. But I must decline this tempting offer. We've already sent her. Ariana said. It's her day off today. She's working on our farm as a driver. A driver? The former deputy asked again. Yes, but it's just a downtime, shouted the grandmother. The car broke down. There's no one to fix it. She will not lie under it, really. He wanted to say that it wasn't a woman's profession, but he kept silent. After all, it's not from a good life that people do things that are hard and even harmful to them. Imagination painted a fragile girl who bravely climbs into a huge ZIL or GAZ and tries to revive it, but without success. Yeah, Ariana replied. Don't kick her out, Harvey. Just take her for a walk around the village. See if she's here yet or not. Harvey looked out of the window. A tall woman, bloody and milky, stood at the gate, shyly shuffling from foot to foot. From the back, it was impossible to make out her age. Certainly not his target audience. But why not take a walk? After all, he had plenty of free time in the village. Harvey decided to call Harry to ask for advice, but the political technologist didn't pick up the phone. All right, thought the former MP. We can go for a walk. The main thing is not to drink tea, or I can't look at him anymore. The woman looked at him with interest. She was smiling with the ingenuous smile that ladies try on themselves to pretend to be simpletons. Harvey decided to be polite too. Hello, he said. Are you expecting me? Oh, good afternoon, she said. My name's Cindy. What are these, chickens? This one's okay, but the other one's lame. I'd better use it for soup. You like soup? They spent the rest of the day walking around the village, eating ice cream, watching the sunset. Cindy's house, as it turned out, was only about 200 feet away in a straight line. It had been a long time since Harvey had socialized with an ordinary woman. He was surrounded by models, business ladies, bankers, and just plain aspiring ladies. Having cut a few circles around the village, approaching the house of a new acquaintance, they stopped. Maybe you'd like me to do the same. Cindy smiled. Like your grandmother's. Well, she expected Harvey to blush or be embarrassed. But no, he was all glowing. It was as if he'd been waiting for word to get around the village about his interest in old ladies. He got all flush. Why not? He answered, but not today. Today, I'm already tired. Maybe tomorrow. He was quite handsome, and she, in her 35 years, was also very pretty. Only there was an unspoken sadness in her eyes. Harvey looked into them and saw the longing of Shesh. Cindy had waited all her life for a man, not a prince, but just a loving man who could listen and hear. Yet she enjoyed every moment and smiled. You can only see the longing if you look well into the soul. I had such a good time, said the former deputy, seeing Tatiana off. We had an interesting conversation. So maybe we'll visit. The woman asked hopefully. Will you come in? Harvey felt homesick. It was not only her youth, beauty, and charm. After all, he was not here to rest or even kill time. Harvey was working, and his political technician was realizing an ambitious experiment. He's 47 years old after all. There's hardly any time to swing. Not this time, he sighed. Maybe next time. Suit yourself, Cindy replied with a smile. Harvey knew right away that the woman wasn't offended. She was the kind of person who knew how to be happy. There was nothing special about it, but that was what was attractive about her. This woman was easy to talk to. He didn't notice how the day flew by. Saying goodbye, she said. Come and see me again. 2 weeks in the village helped the politician to completely reboot. Or was it the complete abstinence from alcohol? Now he woke up at dawn, chopped wood, went for walks, enjoyed life. Things were getting farther and farther away. It was hard to make himself hustle. After all, what was the point of life inside the race if it was no longer enjoyable? To distract himself from such thoughts, the former MP decided to talk to someone who continues to hustle and conquer the top. How is the process going? Asked Harvey, contacting Harry on Telegram. It's going briskly, the political strategist replied. We have hit, as they say, from all guns. I won't list them. Did the old ladies tire you? Well, so. Actually, Harvey was embarrassed to admit that he really liked grandmothers. In their person, he found great listeners and interlocutors. He was amazed at himself, how quickly he switched from unnecessary Moscow luxury to unpretentious rural life. Look, Harvey, Harry said. When you go to chop wood in the morning, make a roar as if you were fighting a mammoth. And more life, more life. What? Not enough views? The former deputy asked incredulously. We need more viral videos. Chop political technologist. Soon you'll have walkers coming to you. They will look for a bunker under the old house, servants. It is necessary that they all sign there in their own worthlessness. All right, I don't have time for this. I've got chickens to feed. One of the old ladies gave him 2 hens so Harvey could eat fresh eggs every morning. Actually, it was a lot of work with those birds. Now the morning began not only with chopping wood, but also with grain. Yesterday, he had bought a kilogram of wheat and corn flakes at the village store. The seller assured him that it would be enough for a week. Chicky, 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 Harvey said, calling his hens. One he named Ryaba and the other Chickadee. His back was aching, as if it needed an honorable rest. After all, Harvey had been too zealous in cutting wood yesterday. After all, he wasn't 20 years old anymore. He had to be careful. If he'd been in Washington at his summer house, he could have called a doctor. He would have examined, massaged, relieved the pain. But here in Cajun, he had to do it on his own. He rubbed some ointment on his lower back and then made a strong bandage. It felt better. Suddenly, he remembered that his new acquaintance had bragged to him yesterday that she had graduated as a nurse. It must be better if she rubbed the ointment on his back, especially since she herself had hinted at visitors yesterday. Cindy, hi, Harvey said after calling her. Are you at work or on vacation? Day off, the girl answered. Why? My back is killing me. Can you give me a hand? As Harvey was going to Cindy's house and his aching lower back, he searched for a suitable gift. After all, it's awkward to visit a woman without a present. Finally, he found an Indian mirror among the memorabilia, a gift from a colleague in Asia. It's beautiful. Cindy, good afternoon, said the deputy, crossing the threshold. Do you know that tomorrow I'll be seeing 10 old ladies at once? Their meetings became regular, and Harvey's lower back no longer bothered him. Selena had been in charge of the name library for many years, almost since the death of the chief, to whom it owed its name. During that time, the interest in books had had its heyday and its oblivion. Now the fashion for reading was returning, and when Harvey suggested holding readings for grandmothers, she was even confused. Wasn't that forbidden? You see, he explained, I've been reading books for 2 weeks now at the request of our villagers. It started spontaneously. We were talking to Ariana, and I noticed Marquet's 100 Years of Solitude. I picked it up and started reading it out loud. She really liked it. She got all fired up. The other one asked me to read her Pounds of Dough. You know that novel by Orwell? Selena said yes, and now she was setting up the chairs. The guests were about to start arriving, and they weren't old enough. What would Harvey be reading tonight? The old librarian thought languidly of the evening ahead. More than an hour before it was to begin, old ladies began to come in. Was I late? One of them asked, putting a dish on the table. Here, I baked a pie. Let Harvey have one afterward. Such a man, echoed the other. He's so thoughtful, so attentive. I'm the one who said, read for everyone, shouted Katie. And me for that. Can you imagine? Soon the library was filled with grandmothers talking about everything in the world. They were making so much noise that Selena could hardly suppress the urge to shush her. Fortunately, today was a special day. Today was the day God himself had commanded the library to be filled with voices, laughter, and life. At 5 to 6, Harvey walked into the library. He was wearing a fine jacket and tie. A cameraman followed him, filming everything that was going on. The politician paid no attention to him. The old lady started clapping, but the former deputy was not embarrassed. He waved his hand, both greeting and offering to sit down. Took out of his briefcase a tome and began. What have I decided to read today? Said Harvey. The immortal classics. Here, Gogol's The Inspector. Do you approve? What a mess, the successor said. No wonder you screwed up the internet too. If you don't want to listen, I won't tell you anything, the former official replied resentfully. It's not for you to judge me. Offense choked the former head of the administration doubly from the fact that he simply carried out the order of the big bosses, albeit in his own way. How could he know that his every move, every word is written by cameras? One could have guessed. In this situation, the dismissal of the negligent official who showed excessive zeal suited everyone. Except for him, the official, who was left without a job. Where can he go now? He doesn't know much about anything, only to pretend to be active and to organize purchases. He was taken out of his sad thoughts by a phone call. An unknown subscriber in Telegram offered to talk to him. Change your mind. Still called to Washington. Running out into the corridor, the former head of the settlement picked up the phone. Jack speaking. Billy, he heard a steely voice in the receiver. I'm so sorry for your loss. It's not nice to be the shooter. Thank you, the former head replied. Who are you? I have my reasons for confidentiality. Let's not waste any time. I called to offer to get even. You have an excellent chance for revenge. And make some money. Revenge on whom? The former head of the settlement asked fearfully. I have no enemies. One ex-deputy, said the voice. I'll give you 300,000. Doubt seized Billy. 300,000 in his situation, it's decent money. But what if he had to do something illegal? Or he might get another shot at fame, but not the fame he dreamed of. I don't know, he admitted. After what happened to me, I'm down. Depends on what you're waiting for. We're waiting for a picture, the voice replied. A picture that will show our hero from the other side. You can keep the camera as a souvenir. Billy brightened. He knew exactly where Harvey spent his evenings, Carlo had told him. I've got an idea, Billy said, but I'm so afraid. Don't be afraid, said a voice. Wait for the courier. He'll arrive in a couple hours and give you a package. I hope for a fruitful cooperation. Billy went into his former office and found his successor rehearsing how he was going to scold his subordinates. And I said that you don't know the manual, he shouted to his imaginary victim and immediately became embarrassed when he looked at his predecessor. Ouch. Don't be shy, said Billy. The main thing is that no one filmed it and put it on the internet, or at least not on a popular channel. His head was pounding again, though Harvey hadn't touched a bottle of liquor in a long time. He woke up to a vibration. His phone, left to charge overnight, was going crazy. Missed calls were everywhere, in Viber, Telegram, WhatsApp. Now the political technologist was trying to reach him on a regular connection. Harvey took the call. What have you done? Shouted into the phone Harry instead of greeting. What is this love line in our flawless series? There was real pain in his voice. The former deputy remembered yesterday, or rather the night before, how he'd come to Cindy's house for no reason, no purpose. How they hugged, and suddenly a flash cut through the darkness. I should have known it was more than that. I should have called Harry right away. Yesterday was a big day, Harvey said. Did you see the incredible number of old ladies I work with? Do you think they'd appreciate a night out? Harry asked. All of it, all of their hard-earned money. Is it impossible to love politics? The former deputy asked defiantly. I've fallen in love. What now? Should I hang myself? Harry was frantically thinking and looking for a way out. He had envisioned everything, but not the human factor, so the dirt could certainly bring down the ratings, or use it to his advantage. He needed an original move, like in chess, to completely turn the game around, a move that his interlocutor had already thought of. You understand, Harvey, pleaded the political technologist. As soon as you choose one woman, the rest will immediately lose interest. We'll never win that way. But I've got an idea that'll turn the game around. I'll tell you about it. No, Harvey said no. To hell with winning. I'm out of the game, Sardi. What? Harry asked, disbelieving his ears. After all we've accomplished? After these ratings with no budget? It's not suicide. It's much worse. I'm out of here, the former MP said. Send me an estimate. I'll pay for it. I have a penny. How much you spent? Tell me every last dime, so you don't hold a grudge against me. Don't you understand? The political technologist shouted. It's not about money. Money is just a tool. I'm not kidding, Harvey said. All right, that's enough. I'm staying here in Guyana. Over and out. He had already realized that he could win the biggest victory of his life, if not today, then tomorrow. It was as if Harvey was filled with energy and the will to act. He took out his cell phone and dialed a familiar number. Did you read the news? He said. That's right, don't read it. And don't go to work today. I'm already running to you, do you hear? Wait for me. At 35, Cindy had given up hope of finding a fiancé. And Harvey, of course, was the real deal. Strong, handsome, interesting. And most importantly, he didn't smoke or drink. All her friends who got married and moved to other cities complained about their husbands. The main complaint is no love, not even respect and understanding. They made Harvey look perfect. Cindy, he shouted as he ran in. They took a picture of you and me together. They say our picture is all over the internet. Let it be, the woman said. If only there was something to be ashamed of. Good girl, he praised. I think so too. I have a proposal. I'm listening, she said, embarrassed. Let's live together, Harvey said. At your place for now, and then we'll see. My place? The woman was surprised. The house, after all. You see what kind of? We'll fix the house, the man suggested. I can do this and that myself. I love Guyana with all my soul, or rather, not Guyana, but you. Did you really love her? She asked and blushed. She was dizzy. In just a few days, her life had turned 180 degrees. I agree. I'll do anything, Harvey. He put his arms around her again and kissed her. At this moment, the former deputy thought that in life you need very little for happiness. Love and nothing else. If you don't have love, you can't replace it with anything. Not fancy cars, not a government villa, not millions of views on the internet. And when love comes, you have to act. In his 47 years, he understood that clearly. How's this going to end, Harvey? Whispered Cindy. Why don't we just screw him? Let's get out of Cajun. We're not going anywhere, said the former assemblyman. The nature here, the sunsets. It's really nice to be here with you. Listen, I've been wanting to know for a long time. Isn't it hard for you with old ladies? She asked. No, Harvey replied. What could be better than reading to grandmothers? It's like spending time with little kids. It wasn't my idea, by the way. It was my assistant. Well, the former one. What kind of entertainment does a grandmother have in the village? TV and radio. A clever man suggested they read books. Will you read to me? Cindy asked me timidly. What about you? I will, he said and lifted his woman in his arms. Then he had to set her down carefully so as not to fall in her eyes. The whole thing made my bloody lower back ache at the worst possible moment. 2 years passed, and life in Caen began to beat again. Tourists came here. The village became fashionable after the resounding success of the project on YouTube. One investor bought 3 empty houses and started renting them out. Harvey himself wrote 2 books and enjoyed reading them to the public. Of course, he didn't have a lot of money, but how much money does it take to live in the country? Harvey, Cindy called him from the bedroom. Help me with Valushka. The former deputy, despite his advanced age, rushed to his girls. The role of father not only suited him, but also liked it. Daughter reminded him of a negligent subordinate, which all must be taught. But the result was pleasing. The girl grew up smiling and beautiful. Listen, he said to Cindy, if God gives us a boy, why don't we name him Harry? In honor of whom? The woman blushed. There's a man, Harvey explained. He's a good man, he understands life, but he's not quite there yet. Whatever you say, my love. Cindy smiled and hugged her husband.